Okay, so like imagine trying to see inside a chess master's head while they're playing, not to see the actual moves, but like how are they thinking? What's going on in there?
Right.
We're going deep on this one with Psychology in Chess by Nikolai Krogius. And this book is like seriously insightful. Even former world champion Boris Spassky was a fan.
Yeah, a classic.
Yeah, it's amazing that Spassky wrote the foreword to it himself. And, he points out that this book tackles something that you don't see a lot of in chess books,
Right.
which is like the human element of the game, the psychology.
Yeah, it's true. Most chess books, they focus on, the strategies, the tactics.
Yeah.
But Krogius really gets it, that to really excel, you got to understand the mental game.
Right.
One of the coolest things he gets into is this idea of the chess image,
Okay.
which is how masters actually see the board in their mind.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always imagine them like analyzing every square, calculating endlessly. But Krokius says it's more about creating like a simplified mental picture.
Right.
Focusing on just the key pieces and squares.
That's it.
Huh. That's a whole different way of looking at it.
It is, and he breaks these images down into 3 types.
Okay.
There's the re-imaged image,
Okay.
which is really fascinating because it's where a player kind of holds on to a mental picture,
Okay.
even after the board position has changed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Krogius talks about this case in the 1929 French Championship, where a player continued making moves based on like a setup that wasn't even there anymore.
Wow.
It just shows how powerful these mental images can be. They can really take hold.
That's wild. Like your mind is stuck on an idea, even though like reality shifted.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But wouldn't that be like more of a beginner's mistake, though?
Not necessarily.
Oh, really?
Even grandmasters can fall into these mental traps,
Wow.
Think about the inert image, for example.
Okay.
It reflects the current position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't account for any potential changes, how things could evolve.
Right.
And Krogius uses this example of Ilyan Sinevsky, who was a top player.
Uh-huh.
And he missed a simple tactic just because he was so focused on this static setup, ignoring the dynamic flow of the game.
Oh, so it's like tunnel vision?
Right.
You get fixated on one thing and you miss the bigger picture?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah, that makes you realize how important it is to be able to adapt, even at the highest level.
Exactly. And that's where the forward image comes in.
Okay.
Because it's not just about what's happening right now.
Right.
It's about thinking ahead, anticipating how the position might change.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Krogius gives this example. It was a game between Sabo Bronstein and another player. And a really important defensive move was missed because the player was stuck in a forward chess image.
Interesting.
That even though it was forward-looking,
Right.
is too narrow. It shows you got to have a flexible mental model, one that can shift and change as the game goes on.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this chess image concept really changes how you think about the game.
Yeah.
Even for someone like me who's, mostly watching.
Right.
It's not just about, calculating. It's about creating this like flexible mental map
Exactly.
of the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about intuition? Where does that fit in?
Intuition in chess is often misunderstood. People think it's just a hunch.
Yeah.
But it's really about processing information quickly.
Okay.
Drawing on years of experience.
Makes sense.
Krogius compares it to a musician recognizing a chord instantly.
Oh, yeah?
They don't analyze every note.
Right. They just know.
They just know it,
Yeah.
Based on their deep knowledge.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It's like you're pulling from this huge library of patterns
Exactly.
and experiences, to make these split-second decisions.
Okay.
But are there like specific examples of this intuition in action?
Yeah.
Like, something beyond just a feeling?
Absolutely. One of the most striking examples Krogius gives is from a game by the grandmaster Nesmitanov.
Uh-huh.
He made this move that seemed totally illogical even to his opponent,
Oh, wow.
but it actually led to him winning.
Really?
And when they asked him about it afterward,
Yeah.
he couldn't really explain the logic behind it,
Oh.
It was pure intuition.
So it wasn't just luck.
Right.
It was this like deeper understanding of the game.
Exactly.
That goes beyond just, conscious analysis.
Right.
But I imagine you can't just rely on intuition, especially as a beginner.
No.
You need to have that like foundation of knowledge to build on, right?
Precisely. Intuition develops through being really immersed in the game,
Yeah.
studying positions, learning from experience. Like any skill, the more you practice, the sharper your instincts get.
Right.
And this ties right into another crucial part of chess psychology.
Okay.
Attention. even the tiniest lapse in focus can be a disaster in a game like this.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah, because every move matters.
Every move matters. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but when we say attention in chess,
Right.
what are we really talking about? Isn't it just like focusing on the board?
It's actually a lot more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Krogius breaks it down into these really fascinating elements.
Mm.
Like there's the transfer of attention.
Okay.
He uses this example from the 1958 USSR Championship, where this grandmaster was so focused on this super complicated combination
Right.
that he completely missed a simple defensive move
Oh, no.
and ended up losing the game.
Wow.
It just shows that it's not enough to just concentrate.
Right.
You have to be able to shift your focus effectively
Hmm.
as the game changes.
So it's like having mental agility,
Yeah,
being able to like redirect your focus as needed.
exactly like that.
But even with the best players, don't there have to be times where their attention slips,
Of course,
where they get distracted?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Krogius talks about the instability of attention.
Oh.
You know how even grandmasters can get thrown off by stuff?
Yeah.
Like noise or their opponent's behavior?
Right, right.
Then there's the distribution of attention,
Okay.
which is being able to focus on multiple things on the board at the same time.
Wow.
Krogius gives this really compelling example of a player who missed a crucial detail
Uh-huh.
just because his attention was too narrowly focused.
Hmm.
You know, he failed to distribute that focus properly.
So it's like having multiple mental spotlights,
Yeah.
shining them on different parts of the board all at once.
Exactly.
Wow, it's making me realize how much mental juggling is going on.
Right.
You know, even beyond just the moves themselves.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and then there's external concentration,
Like
which is
being able to block out all the distractions
yeah.
and just totally immerse yourself in the game.
Right. So it's not just about what's happening on the board.
Yeah.
It's about managing your own mind.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the dreaded time trouble,
Oh.
which like every chess player has experienced at some point.
Right.
What is it that causes players to get into time trouble in the first place?
Right.
Is it just about calculating moves really fast?
It's a lot more than that.
Okay.
Inadequate preparation can definitely play a role.
Yeah.
And so can getting fixated on one particular line of play, almost like that inert chess image we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is the psychological aspect.
Right.
Fear, anxiety, even being overconfident can lead to bad time management.
So it's not just about speed.
Yeah.
It's about being able to make good decisions under pressure.
Right.
And when you think about those high-stakes games with the clock ticking down,
Yeah,
it's got to be so nerve-wracking.
absolutely.
I bet Krogius has some good stories about time trouble.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
There's this one that really shows the impact of pressure.
Okay.
This grandmaster was left with 5 minutes to make 40 moves.
What?
You can imagine the mental strain.
5 minutes for 40 moves.
5 minutes for 40 moves.
That's crazy. There's no way he pulled that off.
Sadly, no.
Yeah.
He ended up making a bunch of rushed decisions,
Yeah.
and it totally cost him the game.
Wow.
It really shows how time trouble can just wreck a player's game.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's actually happening in a player's mind when they're in time trouble?
Right.
How does that pressure, like, change their thinking?
Well, Krogius explains that time pressure forces your mind to simplify things.
Okay.
You focus on immediate threats instead of subtle long-term plans.
Right.
Players tend to get more passive, they underestimate their opponent, and they even overestimate their own position.
So they start playing defensively,
Yeah,
like desperately trying to hold on.
right.
But that can actually lead to even more mistakes, right?
Exactly. Krogius points to several games where players in time trouble
Yeah.
missed winning chances or even lost from positions where they were ahead,
Wow.
all because of these psychological effects, you know?
It's like the pressure creates a vicious cycle.
It does.
You're afraid of making mistakes, so you rush.
Right. And then you end up making even bigger ones.
Exactly.
This is amazing how it all ties together.
Yeah.
You know, the way we perceive the board.
Right.
Our attention, the pressure of time,
Mm-hmm.
it all feeds into how we make decisions.
It all connects.
But if time trouble is so bad, are there ways to manage it?
Yeah.
To like train your mind to handle the pressure?
There are, Krogius suggests a few things you can do.
Okay.
One is to focus on basic objectives.
Okay.
Simplify the position and avoid those super complicated variations.
Right, because those can eat up your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also says it's important to learn how to play decisively when you're under pressure, to train your mind to make good choices even when the clock's ticking down.
So it's about building that mental resilience.
Right.
Like being able to stay calm and focused in those tough moments.
That's it.
And it makes you wonder if time trouble is about managing pressure in a single game.
Yeah.
What about managing pressure over a whole tournament?
That's got to be a whole other level of mental fortitude.
It is, and that's where tournament tactics come in.
Okay.
It's about understanding how these psychological factors influence a player's approach to the whole tournament.
Right, not just individual games.
Exactly.
Tournament tactics, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
So we're talking about more than just trying to win every game. Right?
Yeah.
There's got to be like a bigger strategy at play.
Exactly. It's about understanding what your decisions mean in the long run.
Okay.
Krogius talks about these ideas of playing for a win versus playing for a draw. Sometimes a draw is actually the smart move strategically.
Okay.
Especially when you consider your overall standing in the tournament.
So it's not just about being ambitious.
Right.
It's about making calculated choices based on like the whole tournament situation.
That's right.
Do you have like a specific example of this kind of strategic thinking?
Yeah. Krogius tells this story about a player who deliberately chose a passive strategy just to avoid taking any risks.
Okay.
And he ended up drawing the game.
Okay.
It wasn't because he didn't want to win.
Right.
It was a calculated decision to get a valuable draw in the context of the whole tournament.
So it was like a deliberate psychological move?
It was.
Not just a passive playing style?
Right.
Wow, it makes you realize how much deeper tournament play is
than
just winning each individual game.
It's the big picture.
Yeah, and this leads us to another big part of tournament tactics.
Okay.
Understanding your opponent's psychology.
Right.
It's not just about analyzing their moves. It's about reading their personality, their tendencies, even their emotions during the game.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So we're talking about more than just studying their past games. We're talking about trying to read them in the moment.
Yeah, you almost have to be a mind reader.
Right, it sounds like it. What kind of things should players be looking for?
Well, Krogius points to some really interesting things.
Okay.
He talks about paying attention to their body language. You know, their posture, their hand gestures.
Right.
A confident player might sit up straight and make moves really decisively. While a nervous player might fidget, avoid eye contact, or handle the pieces hesitantly.
It's amazing how much we give away through our body language.
Right.
Even without realizing it.
It's subconscious a lot of times.
But can you really get a real advantage by noticing these subtle cues?
Absolutely. Krogius tells this story about a grandmaster who realized that his opponent had this habit of nervously touching his pawn whenever he felt like his position was under threat.
Interesting.
And the grandmaster used that to his advantage.
Oh, wow.
He kept making these fake threats and attacks just to trigger that tell.
Wow.
And he eventually lured his opponent into a trap.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's like a whole psychological game within the game.
It is.
You know, you're trying to outsmart your opponent, not just with your moves, but by understanding their mind.
Exactly.
That really takes this idea of knowing your opponent to a whole new level.
It does. And it's not just about watching them during the game.
Right.
It's about studying them systematically beforehand.
So, like, analyzing their past games, understanding their typical style, their weaknesses.
Exactly.
Is this something that all serious players do?
Absolutely. Krogius really dives into this idea of systematic study. He even quotes Emanuel Lasker.
Oh, wow.
Who is a world champion.
Right.
And Lasker thought it was essential for winning. He famously said, if you want to win, you have to study your opponent. But if you want to make sure of winning, study yourself.
That's such a great quote.
Isn't it?
So it's a two-pronged approach, you know, understanding your opponent's mind and knowing your own strengths and weaknesses.
That's right.
But how deep does this study go? Are we talking about just looking at their games, or is there more to it?
Krogius gives some great examples of how seriously top players take this.
Okay.
Like Alekhine, before his 1927 World Championship match against Capablanca, he studied Capablanca's games for months.
Wow.
He even analyzed a variation that Capablanca had only played once.
Really?
That level of preparation is incredible.
That's dedication.
It is.
It really shows how much the mental side matters, you know, at the highest levels.
It's not just about talent.
Yeah.
It's about being willing to put in the mental work.
Exactly. But Vinnik, another world champion,
he
took this even further.
He did.
He created these super detailed psychological dossiers on his opponents, like noting their habits, tendencies, even their emotional reactions to different situations?
It's like they're building psychological profiles,
Yeah.
trying to predict their opponent's every move.
That's incredible. But as Lasker said,
Yeah.
it's not just about studying your opponent, it's also about studying yourself.
It's both.
Why is that introspection so important?
Well, it's about self-awareness,
Okay.
recognizing those patterns in your own thinking
Yeah.
that might lead you to make errors. Like a player might realize that he tends to get overconfident when he's in a winning position.
Right.
And that makes him make careless mistakes.
Yeah.
But having that self-knowledge allows him to consciously stay focused.
Right. So it's like catching those mental traps before they sabotage your game.
Exactly.
But how do you actually go about studying yourself?
Right.
Are there like specific techniques that players use?
Krogius suggests a few things.
Okay.
He's a big advocate for rigorous self-analysis,
Okay.
like going over your own games super carefully
Yeah.
to understand your mistakes. And he even recommends this technique he calls under the X-ray,
Okay.
where you try to calculate variations blindfolded.
Blindfolded.
Yeah. It forces your mind to work harder and become more precise.
What are the benefits of practicing like that?
Well, Krogius thinks it strengthens your visualization skills.
Okay.
Because you're forced to see the board in your mind's eye,
Right.
not just with your physical eyes.
Right.
It also makes your memory better. And it encourages you to think more creatively.
Interesting.
It's about training your mind to see the board, not just as a bunch of pieces,
Yeah.
but as this like dynamic battlefield of ideas.
That's such a cool way to put it.
Right.
It's about going beyond the surface
Yeah.
and developing that deeper, more intuitive understanding of the game.
Exactly.
But even with all this mental training,
Yeah.
we can't ignore how emotions affect how we play.
Right. Emotions are huge.
How do emotions like fear, anxiety, or even excitement
Yeah.
affect how we play?
Well, they have a huge impact.
Yeah.
Krogius tells this really sad story about a player who was so overwhelmed by the pressure of a really important game that he made a bunch of blunders and it cost him the win.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is.
It really shows how powerful emotions can be,
They are.
even in a game that's often seen as purely intellectual.
Right. It's not just about logic.
So are there ways to control these emotions?
Yeah.
Like to stay calm and focused under pressure?
Absolutely. Krogius explores different methods,
Okay.
like relaxation techniques, positive self-talk, and focusing on the objective parts of the game instead of getting caught up in the drama.
Right. So it's about detaching from that emotional roller coaster and approaching the game with a clear head.
Exactly.
But even with the best mental prep and emotional control, mistakes are bound to happen, right?
Of course.
Even world champions make them.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Mistakes, it's something we all hate, but in a game as complicated as chess, I guess they're just part of learning.
They are.
What does Krogius say about the different kinds of errors players make?
Well, he breaks them down into blunders.
Yeah.
Which are those obvious mistakes.
Yeah, the ones that make you want to bang your head on the table.
Exactly. Then there's oversights where you just miss a key detail.
Okay.
And positional misjudgments, where you make a decision that weakens your position over time. He uses examples from Grandmaster games to show each type of error.
So it's not just about trying to play perfectly.
Right.
It's about understanding how those mistakes happen.
Yeah.
So we can learn from them.
Exactly.
Given how much emphasis he puts on the mental side of things.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what Krogius says about the link between age and success in chess. Is there like an ideal age for peak performance?
Well, Krogius actually dedicated a whole section to this.
Oh, wow.
He analyzed the careers of lots of chess masters.
Okay.
And he found that statistically, players tend to reach their peak between the ages of 30 and 35.
Really? So right in the middle of their careers.
Right.
When they've got a lot of experience, but they haven't started to decline yet.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But wouldn't that mean that people who start young have a big advantage?
Well, you'd think so, but Krogius actually saw something even more interesting.
Oh.
He noticed that a lot of players had two separate peaks in their careers.
Two peaks?
A shorter one early on, and then a longer, more significant one in their 30s or even 40s.
Wow, so it's not just a straight line up and then down.
No, it's more like a wave.
Yeah.
With multiple peaks and valleys.
That could explain that.
Well, Krogius suggests that the early peak might be driven by the energy of youth. Relying more on intuition and tactical play.
Makes sense.
But as players get older, they develop a deeper understanding of strategy and positional play.
Right.
And that leads to the second bigger peak, which is marked by more consistency and a deeper understanding.
So it's like going from a young, hot-headed warrior to a wise, experienced general.
Exactly.
They both have their strengths.
Right.
But the general brings that experience and that calculated approach.
That's right.
That's fascinating, this whole idea of multiple peaks.
Yeah.
It really shows how complex the relationship is between age, talent, and skill in chess.
It does.
It's not just about starting young or
Right.
having natural ability.
It's about the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about how you develop those skills over time, how you adapt and grow as a player. So it's like a lifelong process of learning and discovering yourself,
It is.
constantly trying to get better, even as your style and approach to the game change over the years.
Exactly.
And that brings us to another cool thing that Krogius talks about,
Okay.
how our individual personalities affect our attention.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Tell me more about that.
Well, Krogius explains that a player's knowledge, experiences, beliefs, views, all of that stuff influences how they focus their attention during a game. It's not just about being able to concentrate in general.
Right.
It's about understanding how your own personal tendencies and experiences shape how you focus on the board.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like we each see the world through our own unique lens.
Right.
And that lens is shaped by all our individual experiences and perspectives.
Exactly.
And in chess, that lens, that way of seeing the board, can be a powerful tool or a potential trap,
You can.
depending on how well we understand and control it.
It's all about understanding yourself
Yeah.
and your opponent.
Oh.
Yeah. It's really interesting how our own individual characteristics, like you were saying, can shape our attention during a game.
Yeah.
You know, Krogius gives a great example of how a player's knowledge of a particular opening can, like, direct their focus.
Okay.
If they're super familiar with a certain opening,
Right.
they might automatically zero in on the squares and pieces that are most important for that opening.
That's like having a mental roadmap.
Yeah.
Based on their knowledge.
Right.
That guides their attention to the most important areas.
Exactly.
But couldn't that also be a drawback in some cases?
You're exactly right. It's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
You know, if the game takes an unexpected turn,
Right.
that player might get stuck on their preconceived notions and miss something really important that's happening.
Yeah.
It's like trying to navigate a new city using an old map.
Right. Right. You
Yeah.
need to be able to adapt
Exactly.
as the game changes.
Yeah.
It reminds me of those forward chess images we talked about.
Mhm.
You know, being able to look ahead,
Right.
but also being flexible enough to adjust your mental model as things change.
Yeah.
And this idea of individuality,
Right.
it ties into another thing. Krogius talks about a player's style.
Yes. A player's style is like their attentional focus. It's super personal.
Okay.
It's influenced by their personality, their temperament, even their cultural background. It's fascinating how all those things come together to shape how someone approaches the game.
So it's not just about finding the best moves.
Right.
It's about expressing yourself through the game,
Yeah.
putting your own unique stamp on it.
That's a great way to put it.
It's almost like an art form.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And understanding a player's style is so important when you're analyzing their games.
Right.
It's like recognizing a painter's brushstrokes or a composer's musical motifs.
Yeah, I get that.
And Krogius, like a true chess connoisseur, he categorizes players into two broad styles, positional and combative.
Now, those are terms I've heard before,
Yeah.
but I always get them mixed up. Could you remind me, what are the key differences?
Of course.
And maybe give some examples of players who really embody these styles.
Okay, so positional players are like architects.
Hmm.
They're carefully building a strong foundation, controlling key squares, and slowly squeezing the life out of their opponent's position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Capablanca was a master of this style.
Oh.
His games are like these elegant, meticulously crafted structures.
So it's about that slow, methodical approach,
Yeah,
patiently building up an advantage over time.
that's it.
It's interesting to think about how different personalities might be drawn to this style.
Right. Some people are just more patient and methodical.
Yeah, exactly. And then what about combinative players?
But combinative players are more like fireworks.
Oh.
Explosive dynamic, always looking for those spectacular tactical breakthroughs. They thrive on chaos and complexity.
Wow.
Always searching for that knockout blow.
So it's a very different mindset.
It is.
Yeah.
Players like Tao and Alekhine were masters of this style.
Mm-hmm.
Their games are full of daring sacrifices and brilliant combinations.
It's incredible to think about how two players can look at the same board
I know.
and see such different possibilities. It's not just their knowledge of the game that's influencing them,
Yeah.
but their personality, their temperament.
It's all connected.
It really is. And this brings us back to something we've touched on before.
Yeah.
Emotions.
Right. Emotions are a big deal.
How they affect our performance.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the intellectual side of chess.
Right.
But we can't forget that we're human beings.
We're not machines.
Not machines, yeah. And our emotions play a huge role in how we think and make decisions.
They do,
especially when we're under pressure.
Especially then.
Yeah.
Krogius shares a really poignant story about a player who was so overwhelmed by the pressure of a crucial game that he made a series of blunders and it cost him the victory.
Oh, that's tough.
It is.
It's a reminder that even the most experienced players can crumble under pressure.
Even the best can make mistakes.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking.
It is.
It shows just how powerful emotions can be.
Yeah.
Even in a game that's often seen as purely intellectual.
Right. People think it's all about logic, but it's not.
So are there ways to train your mind to handle those emotions?
Absolutely.
To stay calm and focused when the pressure's on?
Krogius talks about different methods.
Okay.
Things like relaxation techniques, positive self-talk,
right,
and consciously focusing on the objective aspects of the game.
Okay.
Instead of getting swept up in the emotional drama.
So it's about developing that mental resilience.
Yeah.
Being able to detach from that emotional roller coaster.
Right.
And approach the game with a clear mind.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like those mindfulness techniques that are so popular now.
Yeah.
It's about being present, aware of your emotions, but not letting them control you.
That's it.
It sounds like a valuable skill, not just for chess,
Right.
but for life in general.
For sure.
And speaking of applying these mental strategies to a broader context,
Yeah.
Krogius has a whole chapter on tournament tactics.
He does. It's a big part of the book.
Tournament tactics. That's something I'm really interested in.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
We've been talking a lot about the psychology of individual moves and games.
Right.
But how does that all translate to the bigger picture of a tournament? What are some of the insights that Krogius offers in this area?
Well, he really emphasizes the unique psychological dynamics of a tournament.
Okay.
It's not just about winning each game.
Right.
It's about managing your energy, making strategic decisions, and understanding how your choices will play out over the long term.
So it's like playing a multi-dimensional chess game. You're not just battling your opponent.
Yeah.
You're battling fatigue pressure, the whole tournament environment.
Exactly. That's a lot to handle.
It sounds really challenging.
It is. Yeah. And one of the key concepts he talks about is this balance between playing for a win and playing for a draw. He argues that sometimes a draw is actually the smartest move strategically.
Okay.
Especially if it helps you maintain a good position in the tournament or avoid a really risky game.
So it's about knowing when to push for the win.
Yeah.
And when to play it safe to conserve your energy and your resources.
Exactly.
For those crucial moments.
That's it.
Do you have an example from the book that shows this kind of strategic thinking?
Yeah, he shares a fascinating example from the 12th USSR Championship in 1940.
Okay.
Lilienthal was facing Bondarevsky in the last round. And he decided to play for a draw.
Really?
To secure his tournament victory.
Interesting.
He knew that Bondarevsky was a very sharp, combative player.
Right.
And that playing aggressively would be too risky.
Okay.
So he chose a more passive approach and effectively neutralized the threat.
That's a great example of how understanding your opponent's style and your own strengths and weaknesses can shape your tournament strategy.
All connected.
Yeah, it's about playing the long game. Making calculated decisions that give you the best chance of success over the whole tournament.
That's it.
Not just in one game.
Right.
And this focus on understanding your opponent's psychology is something Krogius talks about a lot.
He does.
He says that observing and analyzing your opponent's behavior, both during the game and in their past games, is essential for getting an edge.
It's a key part of the game.
We talked about how players can pick up on those subtle cues, like body language or nervous habits.
Right, those little tells.
But how does this opponent analysis work in a tournament setting? Are there specific strategies or techniques that players use?
Well, Krogius emphasizes adapting your strategy based on your opponent's personality and tendencies. For example, if you're playing against someone who's known for being emotionally volatile, you might try to provoke them into making a rash decision.
So it's almost like a psychological game within the game.
It can be.
Yeah, trying to manipulate your opponent's emotions to get an advantage.
Right, but it's not always about manipulation.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just about understanding their strengths and weaknesses,
Right?
so you can exploit their vulnerabilities or avoid playing into their strengths.
That makes sense.
Krogius gives lots of examples of how top players have used this kind of psychological insight to win.
It sounds like a fascinating combination of observation analysis and intuition,
It is.
like being a chess detective,
Yeah,
trying to find clues to crack the case of your opponent's mind.
that's a great way to put it.
And this emphasis on understanding your opponent
Yeah.
is only half of the equation.
Right.
Krogius, like Lasker before him, also stresses the importance of knowing thyself.
It's both sides of the coin.
Know thyself. That's such a powerful statement.
It is.
It makes me think about all those introspective exercises we talked about, like analyzing your own games and practicing under the X-ray.
Yeah, those are important.
But why is this self-reflection so crucial in a tournament setting?
Well, Krogius argues that a chess tournament is not just a test of your chess skills. It's a test of your character.
Okay.
You're going to face setbacks. You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You're going to be under pressure.
Right.
To succeed, you need to understand your own strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
your emotional triggers, and how you tend to react under pressure.
So it's about developing that mental toughness,
Right.
that grit and determination to keep fighting,
That's it.
even when things are tough.
You got to be able to bounce back from adversity.
Exactly. And Krogius offers some really interesting insights into how top players manage their emotions
He does.
and stay motivated throughout a tournament.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I'm all ears. What are some of those mental strategies that these chess titans use to stay on top of their game?
Well, he talks about the importance of having a positive mindset.
Okay.
It's easy to get discouraged after a loss,
Right.
but it's crucial to learn from your mistakes, refocus your energy, and approach the next game with a fresh perspective.
So it's about not dwelling on the past,
Yeah,
but using it as fuel to move forward. He
exactly.
also emphasizes self-care.
Right.
Getting enough sleep, eating healthy food, and even doing some light exercise.
Yeah, taking care of your body and mind.
So it's about treating your body and mind like a well-oiled machine,
Yeah.
making sure you're in top condition.
To handle the mental demands of the tournament.
It's a holistic approach.
It is.
And one of the biggest challenges in a tournament is handling the pressure of those really important games, those moments when everything's on the line.
High-stakes games.
Yeah, the pressure can be intense.
They can make or break you.
What does Krogius say about dealing with that pressure? How do the top players manage to stay calm when the heat is on?
Well, Krogius says it's important to stay grounded,
Oh,
to focus on the present moment,
right.
instead of getting caught up in what might happen.
No, get ahead of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also suggests developing pre-game rituals
Mm.
to help you relax and focus.
So it's about creating a sense of calm and control, even in the middle of all that pressure.
It's about finding your center.
It reminds me of those athletes
Yeah.
who have those very specific routines they do before a big competition.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you, what helps you get into that zone.
That's it.
Do you have any examples of how top players use these mental techniques?
Yeah, Krogius tells a great story about Tigran Petrosian,
Oh.
who was a world champion.
Yeah, known for his incredibly solid defensive style.
That's right. He was known for his amazing composure under pressure.
So what was his secret?
Well, Petrosian had a very unique pre-game ritual.
Okay.
He would arrive at the tournament hall early,
Uh-huh.
find a quiet corner, and spend hours meditating.
Meditating, wow. It's
Wow.
like he was creating this mental sanctuary,
Right.
this place of peace and focus
Yeah,
in the middle of all the tournament chaos.
exactly. And it clearly worked for him.
It did. He was a world champion.
Petrosian wasn't just a brilliant chess player.
Right.
He was a master of his own mind.
That's really inspiring.
It is.
It shows that success at the highest levels isn't just about talent or knowledge.
No.
It's about mastering the mental game,
Yeah.
developing that inner strength and composure.
That's what separates the good from the great.
And, this whole discussion about tournament tactics
Right.
has really opened my eyes to how psychology and performance are intertwined in chess.
It's all connected.
It's not just about the moves on the board. It's
Yeah.
about understanding the mental game,
Yeah.
the battles that are happening inside each player's head.
The inner game is just as important.
And Krogius, in his book,
Yeah.
he really explores these psychological factors in such a rich and insightful way.
He does. It's a fascinating book.
It is. And one of the most interesting chapters is about this idea of looking at one's opponent.
Oh, yes. That's a great chapter.
Looking at one's opponent.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
It is.
We've already talked about analyzing their past games
Right.
and observing their behavior during the game, but is there more to it than that?
There is.
What insights does Krogius offer on this subject?
Well, Krogius goes beyond just analyzing moves.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of really seeing your opponent as a person, not just a chess-playing entity.
Right.
He says you have to pay attention to their physical cues,
Okay.
their emotional state, their overall demeanor, all those subtle things that can reveal their thoughts and intentions.
So it's like being a detective,
Yeah.
looking for clues to figure out what's going on in their mind.
Exactly. You got to crack the case.
But are we talking about anything beyond those body language cues?
Well, Krogius goes a lot deeper than that.
All right.
He talks about the importance of their posture and gestures.
Right.
You know, a confident player might sit up straight and make moves really decisively, while a nervous player might fidget, avoid eye contact, or handle the pieces hesitantly.
It's amazing how much we communicate non-verbally,
Right.
often without even realizing it.
It's subconscious.
And Krogius is suggesting that learning to read those signals can give you a real advantage.
It can.
It's like learning a secret language,
It is.
a way of understanding those hidden messages our bodies are always sending.
That's a great way to put it.
Krogius even mentions Emanuel Lasker,
Oh, yeah.
who was famous for his ability to analyze his opponents psychologically.
He was a master of the psychological game.
And Lasker believed that understanding your opponent's personality and tendencies
Yeah.
was just as important as understanding their chess moves.
He was ahead of his time.
So it's not just about what they're doing on the board.
Right.
It's about understanding who they are as a person,
Yeah.
how they think, how they react under pressure.
It's all part of the puzzle.
But how do you actually put this into practice? What should players be looking for when they're observing their opponent?
Krogius offers a lot of interesting things to look out for.
Okay.
He talks about the significance of facial expressions.
Okay.
Is your opponent calm and focused? Or are they showing signs of frustration or anxiety?
Right.
Are they making eye contact or avoiding your gaze?
Interesting.
He also says, pay attention to how they handle the pieces.
Okay.
Were they moving them confidently and decisively? Or are they hesitating and second-guessing themselves?
It's like you need to be a poker player,
Right.
trying to read your opponent's tells.
Exactly.
But can you really gain a real advantage from these little observations?
Absolutely. Krogius tells a great story to illustrate this point.
Okay.
It's about a game between Najdorf and another player.
Okay.
Najdorf noticed that his opponent had this habit of nervously touching his pawn whenever he felt threatened.
That's fascinating.
It is.
It's like a little window into his opponent's mind.
Yeah, you can see their anxieties and insecurities.
And Najdorf, being the brilliant psychological player that he was,
Oh, yeah.
he used this information to his advantage. He
Yeah.
kept making these fake threats and attacks to trigger his opponent's tell.
Right.
And eventually he lured him into a trap and won the game.
He played him like a fiddle.
That's incredible.
It is.
It really shows how important it is to pay attention to those little details, those subtle cues that can tell you so much about your opponent's mental state.
And they can make all the difference.
It takes this idea of knowing your opponent to a whole new level.
It does. And, you know, this concept of observation is just one part of a bigger strategy that Krogius emphasizes.
Okay.
The study of one's opponent.
The study of one's opponent.
Yeah.
So we're moving beyond just observing during the game
Right.
and getting into pre-game preparation. What does Krogius recommend when it comes to researching and analyzing your opponent's past games?
Well, Krogius believes that studying your opponent's past games is absolutely essential.
Okay.
He argues that by analyzing their games,
Yeah.
you can gain all sorts of valuable insights. You know, their characteristic style, their preferred openings, their strengths and weaknesses, their typical tactical patterns,
Right.
even their psychological tendencies under pressure.
So it's like creating a psychological profile,
It is.
a blueprint of their chess mind,
Yeah.
so you can anticipate their moves and exploit their vulnerabilities.
Exactly like a chess detective.
And Krogius points to Alekine's preparation for his 1927 World Championship match against Capablanca
Right.
as a perfect example of this approach.
Yeah. Alekine was known for his meticulous preparation.
He studied Capablanca's games for months,
He did.
leading up to the match.
Yeah, he wanted to know everything about his opponent.
He even analyzed a variation that Capablanca had only played once in his entire career.
That's dedication.
Talk about dedication.
Right.
But it obviously paid off.
It did.
Because Alekine won the match, and became the new world champion.
He was a worthy champion.
It just goes to show that success at the highest levels of chess requires more than just talent.
Right.
It takes hard work, meticulous preparation, and a deep understanding of your opponent.
It's all part of the game.
It really is a fascinating blend of intellectual and psychological elements.
It is.
And Krogius even highlights another great example of this systematic opponents study.
Botvinnik's approach.
Botvinnik, another legendary world champion.
Yeah, one of the greats.
Known for his deep strategic understanding and rigorous preparation.
Right. Botvinnik was a true master of the game.
What was his method?
Well,
how did he approach analyzing his opponents?
Botvinnik was known for creating these incredibly detailed psychological dossiers. On his opponents. He would document everything. Their habits, their tendencies, their strengths, their weaknesses, even their emotional reactions to different situations.
It's almost like something you'd see in a spy movie.
It is.
He was trying to understand not just their chess moves, but their entire personality, their motivations, their fears.
He wanted to get inside their heads.
That's incredible.
It is.
So knowing your opponent is obviously critical for chess success.
Yeah.
But as Lasker said, it's equally important to study yourself.
It's both sides of the coin.
Why is this introspection so important, especially in a tournament?
Well, Krogius argues that self-awareness is key.
Okay.
For success in chess. He believes that players need to understand their own strengths and weaknesses and their own tendencies in order to really reach their full potential and avoid making costly mistakes.
So it's about identifying those blind spots.
Right.
Those areas where our judgment might be clouded by our personality, our habits, or our emotional state.
Exactly.
It's about being honest with ourselves about our limitations.
Yeah, you can't hide from your weaknesses.
And it's not just about identifying weaknesses. It's also about recognizing your strengths and playing to them.
Exactly.
For example, if you're a naturally aggressive player, you might want to choose openings that lead to sharp tactical positions. Where you can unleash your attacking skills.
It's a good strategy.
Or if you're more of a positional player, you might prefer openings that lead to slow strategic battles.
Right.
Where you can gradually outmaneuver your opponent.
It's about playing to your strengths.
So it's about knowing yourself, knowing your game, and making strategic choices that align with your strengths.
And mitigate your weaknesses.
Exactly. But how do you actually go about studying yourself? It's a good question.
Are there specific techniques or exercises that Krogius recommends?
Well, Krogius advocates for a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
He recommends analyzing your own games, carefully reviewing your decisions,
identifying your mistakes, and understanding why you made those errors. It's like being your own coach.
Yeah.
Reviewing the game tape and figuring out where you can improve.
Exactly. And he also suggests that under the X-ray technique we talked about earlier.
That's a good one.
You know, where you analyze positions and calculate variations blindfolded.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Under the X-ray, that's such a cool name.
It is.
Like you're peering beneath the surface, seeing those hidden structures and relationships that are invisible to the naked eye.
Exactly. It's about developing that deeper vision.
And Krogius believes that this blindfolded analysis can really help players develop their visualization skills, improve their memory, and cultivate a deeper, more intuitive understanding of the game.
It's a mental workout for your chess muscles.
It sounds incredibly challenging.
It is.
But also really rewarding.
Right. The rewards are worth the effort.
By training your mind to see the board in this way, you're developing a level of chess vision that goes beyond just calculating moves.
You're seeing the game on a deeper level.
You're understanding those underlying principles and patterns that govern how the pieces move and how the game flows.
You're starting to see the essence of the game.
It's like you're graduating from chess novice to chess master.
Right.
You're seeing the world of chess through new eyes.
Exactly. You're seeing things you never saw before.
Recognizing those subtle nuances and hidden possibilities that were invisible to you before.
It's like a whole new world opens up.
That's a great way to put it. And, you know, this concept of deep understanding is so important when we start talking about the role of mistakes in chess.
Mistakes are inevitable.
Something we all make no matter how good we are.
Everyone makes mistakes.
But in a game as complex as chess,
I
imagine those mistakes aren't just simple blunders.
No.
They're often the result of these complex psychological factors.
They are.
What does Krogius say about the different types of errors that players make?
Well, he puts them into three main categories.
Okay.
Blunders, which are those obvious mistakes that make you want to facepalm.
Right. Those are the worst.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Then there's oversights where you miss a crucial detail, and positional misjudgments where you make a decision that weakens your long-term position.
Exactly.
And he uses examples from Grandmaster games
He does.
to show how even the best players in the world make these mental slips.
Even the greats aren't perfect.
So it's not just about knowing the rules and strategies.
Right.
It's about understanding how our minds work,
Yeah.
how our emotions, our biases, our thought patterns can lead us astray.
They can definitely trip us up.
It's like we're playing against our own minds as
If-
much as we're playing against our opponent.
That's the profound way to put it.
And one of the most common causes of these mistakes, according to Krogius, is a lack of attention.
Attention is key.
Attention, yeah, we talked about this before
I did.
in the context of the chess image and those different ways of perceiving the board.
No?
But how does attention, or rather the lack of it, specifically contribute to making mistakes?
Well, Krogius says that even momentary lapses in concentration can have really bad consequences, especially at higher levels of play.
Makes sense. The margins are so small at that level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He talks about how distractions, fatigue, anxiety, even overconfidence can cause our minds to wander.
Yeah.
And that leads to missing crucial details or making impulsive decisions.
It's like your focus gets pulled in different directions
It does.
and you lose sight of what's important.
He stresses
the importance of developing and maintaining that focus.
Yeah, you got to stay focused.
Throughout the whole game.
The whole time.
So it's not enough to just be like present at the board.
Yeah.
You have to be like actively engaged, mentally sharp, and constantly like scanning the position for threats and opportunities.
You got to be alert.
That sounds mentally exhausting.
It can be, but Krogius offers some good advice
Okay.
on how to improve concentration and avoid those lapses in attention.
I'm all ears. What are some things we can do to strengthen our focus and minimize those attention errors?
He emphasizes both physical and mental preparation.
Okay.
Getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, and regular exercise can all help.
So it's about treating your body right,
Yeah.
nourishing it with healthy habits, and giving it the rest it needs.
You got to take care of yourself.
Makes sense if your body's running on fumes.
Right.
Your mind won't be far behind.
Exactly. He also recommends incorporating mindfulness exercises into your routine.
Okay, like what kind of exercises?
Things like meditation or deep breathing techniques, which can help you cultivate a calmer, more focused mind.
So it's about training your mind to be present, to stay in the moment, and resist those mental distractions that are always popping up.
It's a constant battle.
That's a skill that's useful not just for chess.
But for life in general.
Absolutely. And, you know, this idea of mental training, it connects to another important thing that Krogius talks about,
Okay.
the power of visualization.
Visualization, we talked about that a little bit.
We have.
With under the X-ray technique.
Right.
But how does visualization help improve our overall chess skills?
Whoa.
Especially when it comes to avoiding those attention slips.
Krogius thinks visualization is a crucial skill for any chess player.
Okay.
He says that by training your mind to see the board and the pieces in your mind's eye, you can really improve your calculation and planning abilities.
Okay.
And that helps you avoid careless mistakes.
So it's like building a mental gym for your chess skills.
Yeah.
Strengthening your ability to see the board, anticipate your opponent's moves.
And calculate variations accurately.
Without actually having to physically see the position.
Exactly. It's all in your head.
It's like learning to see the game on a different level.
It is.
Developing that inner chess vision.
Right. That lets you perceive the board with more clarity and depth.
You start to see things you never noticed before.
Than just looking at the pieces.
Exactly.
That's a great way to put it. And this idea of visualization.
Yeah.
It's closely tied to another important element that Krogius explores.
Okay.
Intuition.
Intuition. That's a big one.
Intuition, we've talked about how it's not just a hunch,
Right.
but a product of knowledge, experience, and pattern recognition.
It's all those things combined.
But how does intuition specifically help us avoid mistakes?
Well, Krogius argues that intuition can act as a kind of safeguard. Like a warning system that alerts you to potential dangers or missed opportunities. It's that feeling you get when something just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
When a move just doesn't look good.
Right.
Even if you can't immediately explain why.
If your gut is telling you something's off.
Exactly. It's your subconscious speaking.
So it's like having a subconscious chess coach.
Yeah.
Whispering in your ear, guiding you in the right direction.
Even when your conscious mind is struggling to make sense of things.
And Krogius emphasizes that intuition develops naturally over time.
It does.
Through study and practice.
The more you play, the more you learn.
The more you immerse yourself in the world of chess.
Right.
The more patterns and positions you see, the stronger your intuition becomes.
It's like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get.
It's like developing a sixth sense for the game.
Yeah.
An ability to see those subtle nuances and hidden dangers that a less experienced player might miss.
It's like you develop a feel for the game.
Exactly. And this whole discussion about intuition and experience, it leads to another interesting question.
Okay.
What's the relationship between age and success in chess?
That's a big one.
Is there like a prime time for chess brilliance?
Right.
A certain age when our minds are like perfectly tuned
Yeah.
for calculating those amazing combinations and avoiding those costly blunders?
That's the question, isn't it?
The age-old question.
Yeah.
Does age really matter in chess?
Some people think it does. Some people think it doesn't.
Is it a game for the young and talented?
Right.
Or is it one where experience and wisdom ultimately win out?
It's a good question.
What did Krogius find in his research?
Well, Krogius, being the thorough researcher that he is, analyzed the careers of tons of chess masters to see if he could find any patterns related to age and performance. And his findings are pretty interesting.
Okay, tell me.
He discovered that statistically speaking, chess players tend to reach their peak performance between the ages of 30 and 35.
Really? So right in the middle of their careers, when they've built up a good amount of experience and knowledge, but haven't started to decline yet?
Exactly.
That makes sense, but wouldn't that mean that people who start learning chess really young have a big advantage?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But Krogius actually found something even more interesting. He noticed that a lot of players actually experience 2 peaks in their careers.
2 peaks.
An initial shorter peak early on, followed by a longer, more significant peak in their 30s or even 40s.
2 peaks. That's fascinating.
It is.
So it's not just a straight line up and then down.
No, it's more like a wave.
Yeah.
With multiple peaks and valleys.
What could explain that?
Well, Krogius thinks the early peak might be due to the enthusiasm and energy of youth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, relying more on intuition and tactical play.
Right.
But as players get older, they develop a deeper understanding of strategy and positional play.
Okay.
And that leads to the second bigger peak, which is marked by more consistency and a deeper understanding of the game.
So it's like a transformation from a young, fiery warrior to a wise, experienced general.
That's a great way to put it.
They each have their strengths,
Right.
But the general brings that experience and that calculated approach.
That depth of understanding.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is.
This whole idea of multiple peaks. It really highlights the complex relationship between age, talent, and skill in chess.
It shows that it's not a simple equation.
It's not just about starting young or having natural ability.
Right.
It's about how you cultivate and refine those skills over time.
Yeah.
How you adapt and evolve as a player.
That's what makes a great chess player.
So it's like a lifelong journey of learning and self-discovery.
It is.
A constant quest to improve.
Right.
Even as your style and approach to the game change over the years.
You never stop learning.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect that Krogius explores.
Okay.
The concept of combinative thinking.
Right.
And its role in achieving chess mastery.
Combinative thinking is essential.
Combinative thinking, it sounds like a really important skill.
It is.
But one that's maybe hard to define.
Yeah, it's a bit abstract.
How does Krogius describe this concept? And how does it relate to age and success in chess?
He describes combinative thinking as the ability to see the board not just as a collection of individual pieces, but as a network of interconnected relationships. It's about understanding how the pieces work together.
Okay.
How they support each other, and how they can be combined to create powerful attacks or defensive structures.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Those underlying patterns and possibilities that are hidden beneath the surface.
You guys see the whole board.
It's about developing that chess intuition we talked about.
Right.
That ability to see the right moves, even when you can't explain the logic behind them.
Like a sixth sense.
Exactly. And Krogius makes an interesting observation about the development of this combinative thinking.
Okay.
He says it's not necessarily tied to age or an early start in chess.
That's right.
Really, I would have thought that starting young would be crucial.
Yeah, a lot of people think that.
For developing those chess circuits in the brain.
Right.
Wiring your mind to think in that combinative way.
It seems logical.
Yeah.
But Krogius's research suggests otherwise. He observed that many strong players, even world champions,
Okay.
didn't start playing chess seriously until their teenage years.
That's encouraging.
It is.
It means that even those of us who discover chess later in life can still aim for mastery.
Absolutely. It's never too late to start.
That's great to hear.
The key, according to Krogius, is to focus on developing that combinative thinking.
Okay.
That ability to see the connections between the pieces and the hidden possibilities within each position. You got to train your mind to see the board in a new way.
So it's not just about memorizing openings or studying tactical tricks.
Right.
It's about cultivating a deeper understanding of the game.
That's it.
A way of thinking that lets you see beyond the individual moves and grasp the strategic essence of the position.
Got to see the big picture.
Exactly. And this idea of deep understanding is closely related to another key element that Krogius explores.
Okay.
Attention.
Attention. We've talked about that a lot.
Attention. Yeah, it keeps coming up.
It's fundamental.
It's like a recurring theme.
Right.
A cornerstone of strong chess play.
It's the foundation.
What new insights does Krogius offer on this topic?
Well, Krogius dedicates a whole chapter to attention.
Oh, wow.
Breaking it down into different aspects.
Okay.
And highlighting how important it is for success in chess.
Makes sense.
He talks about the transfer of attention.
Okay.
Which is the ability to shift your focus smoothly from one part of the board to another.
Right.
From one idea to another.
Okay.
As the game progresses.
So it's about mental agility, being able to adapt your focus as the situation changes.
Like a spotlight that can quickly illuminate different parts of the stage.
Exactly. And this ability to shift your focus, it's closely related to another aspect Krogius discusses, the instability of attention.
Instability.
So we're talking about those times when our concentration wavers.
Right.
When we get distracted, when our minds start to wander.
Yeah, those mental lapses.
What causes this instability? And how can we overcome it?
Well, Krogius points to several factors that can contribute to this instability.
Okay.
External distractions like noise or uncomfortable playing conditions, and internal factors like fatigue, anxiety, or even overconfidence.
Right, right. So both external and internal things can affect our focus.
Exactly. He shares an interesting example from the 1958 USSR Championship,
where
a grandmaster was so focused on calculating this really complicated combination that he missed a simple defensive move.
Oh, no.
And lost the game.
Wow. So he was so fixated on one idea, one line of attack, that he became blind to other possibilities, to the potential threats that were lurking elsewhere.
You got tunnel vision.
It's a classic example of how a lack of attentional flexibility can be disastrous.
It can cost you the game.
And this brings us to another important point that Krogius makes.
Okay.
The distribution of attention.
Distribution.
So we're talking about being able to focus on multiple things on the board at the same time.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. It's a mental juggling act.
Krogius emphasizes having a global awareness of the whole position.
Right.
Not just focusing on one small area.
You got to see the whole board.
You need to be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of both sides, the potential threats and opportunities that exist across the entire board.
It's like having a mental panoramic view of the battlefield.
I like that analogy.
Instead of just focusing on one small skirmish.
It sounds like a real mental challenge.
It is.
Trying to keep all those things in mind at the same time.
Especially under pressure.
Especially under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where external concentration becomes so important.
That's right.
External concentration, we've talked about concentration in general.
Yeah.
But what does Krogius mean by external concentration?
He's talking about the ability to block out all distractions.
Okay.
And focus only on the game. Creating a mental bubble around yourself.
Right.
Shutting out all those extraneous thoughts and stimuli.
And completely immersing yourself in the world of the chessboard.
So it's like achieving a state of deep focus.
Yeah.
Like a Zen master meditating in a busy marketplace,
Definitely.
shutting out the noise and distractions of the outside world and creating that inner stillness
That's the key.
where you can fully engage with the game.
That's when the magic happens.
And Krogius believes that this ability to maintain focus,
Yeah.
it's crucial not just for avoiding blunders,
Right.
but also for developing a deeper understanding of the position
Uh-huh.
and coming up with creative plans.
Well, it frees your mind.
It's about clearing away all those mental distractions.
Yeah.
So you can see the board with more clarity and insight.
That's when you start to see the real possibilities.
It sounds like attention is really the foundation
It is.
upon which all those other chess skills are built.
You can't build a house without a strong foundation.
Without that focused awareness,
Right.
those moments of clarity and insight
Yeah.
are much harder to come by.
They are. Attention is everything.
And speaking of attention,
Yeah.
Krogius goes on to discuss some common deficiencies of attention
Oh, yeah.
that plague chess players of all levels.
We've all been there.
Deficiencies of attention. That sounds like something we can all relate to.
We all have our weaknesses.
Yeah, we've all had those moments
Right.
when our focus slips,
Well,
when we get distracted or make careless mistakes.
It happens to the best of us.
What are some of the common pitfalls that Krogius highlights?
Well, one common deficiency he talks about
Mm-hmm.
is the tendency to overestimate your opponent's active possibilities. You know, players sometimes get so fixated on defending against threats
Right?
that they miss chances to create their own threats
Okay.
or exploit weaknesses in their opponent's position.
Interesting.
It's like being so focused on dodging punches
Yeah.
that you forget to throw any yourself.
I like that analogy.
It's about finding that balance
Right.
between defense and attack.
Yeah.
Not getting so caught up in one that
Yeah.
you neglect the other.
And another related pitfall is the tendency to overestimate your own position.
Right.
Players can become overly optimistic,
Uh-huh.
and that leads to rash decisions or overlooking potential dangers.
Yeah, it's a classic pride before the fall scenario.
It is.
In chess, overconfidence can be just as dangerous
Oh, yeah.
as a lack of confidence.
Sometimes even more so.
It's like thinking you're miles ahead in a race,
Right.
only to trip over your own feet just before the finish line.
It's a painful way to lose.
I bet Krogius have a good story about this.
He does. He tells a story about a game
Okay.
where the Grandmaster Levenfish
Uh-huh.
had a really promising position,
Okay.
but he got overconfident
Oh, no.
and he missed a subtle defensive move. And that allowed his opponent to launch a devastating counterattack
Wow.
and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
So even at the highest levels,
Right.
a lapse in judgment because of overconfidence
Yeah.
can have huge consequences.
It can change the whole game. It's a reminder that chess is a game of constant vigilance.
You gotta stay sharp.
You can never let your guard down,
Right.
no matter how strong your position seems.
Never underestimate your opponent.
And Krogius's advice for overcoming these attentional deficiencies is to develop something he calls critical attention.
Critical attention.
What does that mean?
Well, it's about training your mind to constantly question your assumptions,
Okay.
to look at the position objectively and actively search for hidden dangers or opportunities that you might have missed.
So it's about being your own toughest critic,
Yeah.
constantly challenging your own thoughts and ideas
To make sure they hold up.
to make sure they're set. That sounds like a lot of work.
It is. It's mentally demanding.
Yeah, but it's an essential skill for any chess player who wants to improve.
It's the key to getting better.
And Krogius suggests some practical exercises for developing this critical attention.
Right.
Like analyzing your own games,
Okay.
studying grandmaster games,
Yeah.
and even solving chess puzzles blindfolded.
That's a good one.
Blindfolded puzzles.
Yeah,
That sounds incredibly challenging,
it is.
but also like a really effective way to hone your visualization skills
Right?
and deepen your understanding of the game.
It pushes you to your limits.
And that brings us to another crucial element that Krogius explores,
Okay.
the psychological effects of time trouble.
Time trouble, the chess player's worst nightmare.
Time trouble, the bane of every chess player's existence.
It's a killer.
We talked about it earlier.
We did.
But now I'm really curious to hear what Krogius has to say about how it affects our thinking and decision-making.
Well, Krogius really captures that psychological state that time pressure creates. It can trigger anxiety, fear, even panic.
Wow.
It makes it so hard to think clearly and rationally.
It's like your mind is racing,
Yeah.
trying to find a solution before the clock runs out. But the pressure just makes it harder to focus.
It's that fight or flight response kicking in.
Right. But instead of running away, you're stuck at the board.
Yeah, you're trapped.
Trying to make sense of the chaos while the seconds tick by.
It's a terrible feeling.
And he highlights some of the effects of this time pressure on our thinking.
Yeah.
He says it leads to simplification, passivity,
Right.
and a tendency to overestimate your own position.
It distorts your judgment.
So we start making impulsive decisions, grabbing at the first move that looks okay,
Right.
without really thinking it through.
You don't have time to think.
We become more defensive, afraid of making a mistake.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, often leads to even bigger blunders.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
The fear of making mistakes under time pressure actually makes you more likely to make them.
That's the irony.
It's a vicious cycle, but surely there are ways to manage this.
There are.
To train your mind to handle that pressure
Right.
and make better decisions even when the clock is ticking down.
Krogius offers some good advice.
Okay, what does he recommend?
He says it's important to focus on basic objectives,
Okay.
simplify the position,
Huh?
and avoid those complex variations that can eat up your time.
Right. Don't get bogged down in complicated calculations.
Exactly. He also says it's important to learn to play decisively under pressure, to train your mind to stay calm and make clear choices even when the seconds are slipping away.
So it's about developing that mental resilience, that ability to stay cool under pressure.
That's it.
And it's also about being aware of your time usage throughout the game,
Right.
not wasting precious minutes early on.
Yeah.
So you have more in reserve when the pressure really kicks in.
It's like pacing yourself in a marathon.
Exactly like a marathon runner who conserves their energy for that final sprint to the finish line.
That's a great analogy.
And this idea of pacing yourself,
Yeah.
of conserving your mental energy,
Right.
it's important not just in individual games, but also in the context of a whole tournament.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us back to tournament tactics.
Yes.
Which Krogius really dives into.
Okay.
He argues that a chess tournament isn't just a series of games.
Right.
It's a psychological marathon that demands a different kind of mental preparation and strategic thinking.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture,
Yeah.
understanding the psychological dynamics of the tournament, managing your energy levels,
Right.
and making strategic decisions.
Yeah.
That will give you the best chance of success over the long haul.
It's a long game.
It is. And one of the key elements Krogius emphasizes is the importance of developing a strong psychological foundation.
Mental toughness is crucial.
Chess tournaments can be incredibly demanding,
They are.
both physically and mentally.
It's a grind.
You're going to face setbacks, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to be under pressure.
Variable.
To thrive in that environment,
Yeah.
you need to be resilient, adaptable, and able to bounce back from adversity.
You got to be able to take a punch.
So it's about having that mental toughness, that grit and determination to keep fighting,
That's it.
even when the odds are stacked against you.
Never give up.
It's about learning from your mistakes,
Right.
adjusting your strategy, and coming back stronger than ever.
That's the champion's mindset.
Exactly. And Krogius offers some really interesting insights
He does.
into how top players stay composed and motivated throughout a tournament.
It's not easy.
I'm eager to hear what he has to say. What are some of the mental strategies that these chess titans use to stay on top of their game?
Well, he talks about the importance of having a positive mindset.
Okay.
It's easy to get discouraged after a loss,
Right.
but it's crucial to learn from your mistakes, refocus your energy, and approach the next game with a fresh perspective. Don't dwell on the past.
It's about using those setbacks as fuel to move forward.
Exactly.
And he also talks about self-care,
Right.
getting enough sleep, eating healthy food, and even doing some light exercise.
It's all connected.
So it's about taking care of yourself both physically and mentally
Right.
to make sure you can perform at your best throughout the tournament.
You got to be at your peak.
It's a holistic approach.
It is.
And one of the biggest challenges in a tournament is handling the pressure of those really crucial games.
Right.
The ones where everything's on the line.
The pressure can be overwhelming.
Those moments when the stakes are so high, what advice does a Krogius offer for dealing with that pressure?
Wow.
How do the top players manage to stay calm and collected in those situations?
Krogius emphasizes the importance of staying grounded,
Okay.
focusing on the present moment.
Right. Instead of getting caught up in what might happen.
Don't worry about the future.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Stay in the now.
He also suggests developing pregame rituals.
Yeah, rituals can be helpful.
Help relax and focus the mind.
Right.
So it's about creating a sense of control in the midst of all that chaos.
Yeah, finding your center.
Finding those anchors that keep you steady even when the storm is raging around you.
That's a great image.
Do you have any examples of how top players use these mental techniques?
Yeah, Krogius tells this great story about Tigran Petrosian,
Oh,
who was a world champion,
Yeah, known for his incredibly solid defensive style.
and his amazing composure under pressure.
So what was his secret?
Well, Petrosian had a very unique pre-game ritual.
Okay, I'm curious.
He would arrive at the tournament hall early,
Mm-hmm.
find a quiet corner,
Okay.
and spend hours meditating.
Meditating. Wow.
Yeah,
It's like he was creating this mental sanctuary for himself.
right.
This place of stillness and focus
Yeah.
in the middle of all the tournament craziness.
It was his way of finding peace.
And it clearly worked for him.
It did. He was a master of his mind.
Petrosian's composure wasn't just natural talent.
Right.
It was something he actively cultivated through practice and discipline.
He worked at it.
That's really inspiring.
It is.
This shows that success at the highest levels isn't just about talent or knowledge.
Mhm.
It's about mastering your mind,
Right.
developing that inner strength and composure.
It's the mental game.
And this whole discussion about tournament tactics, it really highlights Krogius's main point.
What's that?
Success in chess isn't just about being brilliant strategically.
Okay.
It's about understanding the psychological side of the game.
Right.
It's about mastering your own mind as well as mastering the board.
It's both.
It's about becoming a chess warrior,
Yeah.
training your mind and body for battle,
Right.
developing that mental resilience and strategic cunning
Uh-huh.
that will help you thrive in the heat of competition.
It's a mental battle.
As we wrap up our deep dive into psychology and chess,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how insightful Krogius's ideas are.
He's brilliant.
He offers such a nuanced and complex view of the game.
Yeah.
He really sheds light on those mental and emotional aspects
Uh-huh.
that are often overlooked or underestimated.
They're crucial.
It's like he's giving us a backstage pass.
Right. To the inner workings of the chess mind,
Yeah.
revealing the secrets and strategies that top players use to achieve greatness.
It's fascinating.
And the great thing about his